morning. My name is Rebeccah Love. Exactly 15 years ago, I was placed in restraints at St. Michael's Hospital in downtown Toronto. I was 20 years old. By that point, I had already been living with bipolar 1 disorder for about 2 years. The year after I graduated high school, I was already in and out of the psych ward. So the trajectory was not subtle. Before I go any further, I need to tell you I have not had a psychotic episode requiring hospitalization for over 15 years. But the experiences I had before that stayed with me. I graduated valedictorian of my high school, and a year later, I was in a psychiatric ward. A couple years after that, restrained in a hospital bed, calling out for help. I remember that moment very clearly. Each limb was strapped down. I was staring up at a painfully bright light, trying to communicate something about my internal world that was not landing in a way anyone around me could recognize as coherent. And that gap between what is happening inside someone's mind and what the outside world can understand is where I have spent most of my adult life. When I was younger, before my first major episode, I spent a lot of time in my grandfather's office. He was a retired economist, a Cambridge graduate, someone who had worked on energy demand forecasting for Ontario Hydro. He thought in terms of data, prediction, long-range systems. He would sit with me and talk about the future of climate, pointing to cities around the world, saying that one day parts of the world would become uninhabitable and many, many people would die. These were not irrational fears. They were grounded in models and institutional authority. He was talking about climate change disaster, and I was internalizing those truths. But I didn't understand at the time those conversations were doing something very specific to my mind. They were not just frightening me, they were shaping the language of my future psychosis and feeding an early impulse towards prophetic thinking, towards seeing myself not just as someone observing the future, but as someone who might have to interpret or even announce it. Because when I became unwell, my brain did not reach for nonsense. It reached for the most authoritative frameworks it had available: prediction, inevitability, global systems, collapse. The boundary between rational concern and psychotic certainty became almost impossible to locate. So when I say that my privilege did not protect me from this illness, I mean that quite literally. But it did shape its language. Around 18, 19, 20, my internal world became saturated with existential panic, a sense that I was inheriting a world on the brink of collapse, and that I needed to understand it, articulate it, and respond to it. At the same time, I was falling in love, or something like it. Most people experience romantic infatuation as euphoria. For me, it triggered a manic escalation. I stopped sleeping, I ate less, and my thoughts accelerated, connecting love, literature, climate, destiny into one continuous narrative. I remember reading the Canadian author Mordecai Richler. He was describing the peeling balconies in Montreal while I was visiting that city. And I thought to myself, with certainty, I could do that too. I could write stories for a national audience, not as aspiration, but as fact. Later, in the hospital, I read Virginia Woolf's Moments of Being and experienced a merging, her voice and mine collapsing into one. From the inside, psychosis does not feel disorganized. It feels over-organized. Everything becomes connected. Everything becomes meaningful. It's a kind of unbearable coherence. I also want to be very clear where I stand in relation to psychiatric care, because I'm speaking in a room full of people who carry that responsibility. I do not see myself outside of modern psychiatric practice. I depend on it and continue to depend on it to stay well. I take my medications every night and have done so consistently for years. I maintain regular contact with medical professionals, and I've learned to treat even small changes in sleep, energy, or cognition as something worth checking early rather than late. There's a distinction between illness and insight, but it is not always a clean line. It's often defined less by what a thought is and more by what it does. It's one thing to notice patterns in society or feel attuned to instability. It's another when those patterns begin to disrupt sleep, eating, communication, and functioning. In those moments, I'm firmly in favor of intervention, medication, support, or hospitalization when necessary. I do not romanticize those states, and I do not confuse intensity with stability. At the same time, it's important to acknowledge that even in psychosis, there is an internal coherence. From the outside, it can look fragmented, but from the inside, it is frequently a form of meaning being taken too far, an attempt to make the world fully legible. Recognizing that does not reduce the need for treatment. If anything, it clarifies. What is being treated is not just disruption, but interpretation that has become too totalizing to remain livable. Over the past 15 years, I've learned to live with that vulnerability without letting it define everything. My condition is now very well managed. I've not had a full psychotic episode, as I said, in 15 years. But vulnerability does not disappear. It fluctuates. I still monitor sleep, energy, and seasonal shifts. I have to be careful with intensity in my life. One psychiatrist once told me that the ancient Greek thinkers observed seasonal changes in human psychology, a kind of spring awakening of the mind. He linked it to broader biological rhythms, even referencing Stravinsky's Rite of Spring as a cultural expression of that surge. I don't know how literal that model is, but I do know I have seasonal patterns. In Toronto, usually around January, something begins to accelerate internally. There are small containment strategies, avoiding certain romantic situations, keeping routine, not sending long messages at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's also, at times, a more primal quality to that seasonal shift, something closer to an animal mating instinct, a surge of energy that feels biological as much as psychological. All of this falls under what I think of as containment, because I've learned that I carry a lot of energy, what Freud might call libidinal energy. He used that word more broadly as an internal life force. Freud's idea of sublimation is simple. Powerful internal drives, if expressed directly, can become destabilizing. But if redirected into structured work, art, writing, creation, they can become sustainable. For me, that's not theoretical, it's practical. The problem is not lack of energy, it's excess. Mania is overflow, emotional, symbolic, imaginative overflow. And if that overflow is not contained, it can burn through relationships and through life itself. So sublimation becomes a way of structuring that intensity. My impulses have to be contained and tamed, almost like a lion. There's something generative there, but also something destructive, if uncontained. That energy now gets shaped into writing, scripts, and films, and somewhat unexpectedly into Instagram. I use it as a container for internal excess, a way of externalizing and organizing thought in real time. it raises a constant question: is this pathology or vocation? Around the same time, I found myself thinking more about the systems we're all participating in. A friend who works in tech pointed out something simple but unsettling. The devices we rely on always, in some sense, are listening, collecting, and learning from us. Most of us willingly contribute to this through social media, through the ways we document and externalize our lives. And I recognize myself in that. I often use the internet as a kind of public diary, a place where internal intensity becomes visible and sometimes validated. What stays with me is how closely this overlaps with something I saw in psychiatric wards. Many patients I lived alongside were preoccupied with surveillance, convinced they were being watched or monitored. At the time, those beliefs were being dismissed as delusional. And yet, in a different register, we now openly acknowledge forms of surveillance embedded in everyday life. I don't say that to validate paranoia or to blur the line between illness and reality. I remain strongly in favor of treatment as an intervention, as I said. But it does complicate the picture. Sometimes what appears irrational contains fragments of real cultural anxiety, taken too far, made total, but not totally invented. That overlap between internal logic and external reality is something I continue to think about both in my life and my work. Sometimes people reach out concerned when I'm simply processing or writing. But it's also given me distance from my own mind, my ability to notice patterns early and recalibrate before escalation. There's also a tension that has emerged over time. Some things that once felt like delusions now have partial reflections in reality. I've had generous responses to my film work, including in national newspapers, and that creates a new challenge: metabolizing praise without slipping into the same patterns that once destabilized me. That tension between imagination and stability is something I constantly negotiate in relation to delusions of grandeur. This is what led me to my film, which we're going to watch, Eve Prayed. The film is autobiographical. Eve is modeled on my experience of illness 15 years ago. It's a utopian vision of crisis care. What happens if, instead of fearing people in crisis, we care for them? In my own life, there were moments during my episodes where neighbors intervened quietly, calmly, without escalation. Those moments stayed with me. We shot the film in my parents' neighborhood in Toronto. It appears calm, even idyllic. Within that space, Eve begins to unravel. Her neighbors gather around her. The intervention is collective, coordinated, and grounded. There is even lightness, moments of humor and steadiness. It becomes a form of shared holding. The film was also shaped by the deaths of Regis Korchinski-Paquet and Ijaz Choudhury during mental health police interventions in Toronto. Those events raised urgent questions about how crisis is met. Eve's fear of the hospital is not abstract, it's lived experience. I still think often about psychiatric wards, about people with far fewer resources, less language, and less protection than I had. Care and harm can sometimes be uncomfortably close. And while we often dismiss fear of systems as paranoia, sometimes that fear is grounded in experience. One challenge in making Eve Parade was understanding the responsibility of representation. As you're going to see, our lead actor had to embody states of distress repeatedly. In hindsight, I did not provide enough structure or protection around that process. That changed how I work. Now the question is not only how to depict psychological extremity, but how to do so without harm. how to build containers not just for stories, but for people. So the question I return to is simple. How do we respond to crisis in a way that holds someone physically, psychologically, and humanly? Because psychosis is not only symptom, it's meaning, intensity, and vulnerability all at once. And if we focus only on stopping it without understanding it, we risk losing the person inside it. So I'll just add briefly that I'm continuing to develop my work in this space. I've made 4 films exploring psychosis and crisis, which have screened at festivals across Canada and been featured on the TIFF platform. My feature film debut, Fortescue, which we're screening tonight, is currently streaming on CBC Gem. So I'm very open to continuing these conversations through screenings, discussions, or speaking engagements like this one. So that's my chat, but we're going to watch the film.
Gentlemen. Just wait, sorry, 1 second. Excuse me, sir. You don't have a ticket. Believe me, I know things. I know all things. Okay, here's a show for you. I'm putting on a show. It's me, the actor, right here. But really, it's the voice of another person. Me. Can you hear me? You know who it is. It's me. I'm trying to, well, I'm speaking through this actor, but I'm trying to tell you something very important. I'm afraid because if I call the authorities, they might hurt me. They might wrestle me to the ground, and they might really, really hurt me, which is why I'm putting on this play in my front lawn. This is my house, which is why I'm putting on this play in my front lawn, so I can let you know that they often do violence to people like me, just because we think a little bit differently than everyone else. Doctors and nurses are going to say that it's everyday precaution, but it's really scary because I'm an innocent person. I pay my taxes and I make birthday cards for my friends. I just think a little bit differently than everyone else. And they're going to hurt me because of it. I think that there could be a better way of going about all of this, like a utopian vision. And you might think I am absolutely crazy, but I'm asking you to look past my scattered speech. Because beyond all of his unusual behavior, I'm just a person! Just like you! And you! And you! I'm scared. Scared it's gonna hurt me. Thank you for coming. To come see this teeny tiny show put on by a semi-important person. Named Eve. And this is my purpose. It is the French Revolution! And I like how you all dotted yourself. Lined up.
Hey, Ben. Hey, yeah, it's me. Hey, listen, congratulations on that grant, huh? Yeah, it's amazing, dude. So happy for you. Hey, listen, your sister's having a moment again. Yeah, listen, if it's alright with you, I don't mind watching her for a bit until you come back. 30 minutes? Yeah, that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Sorry. This is a scary moment. This is supposed to be a musical. We made it a horror. Go! Get! Ugh. When the small ones come for us.
Hey, Eve.
There.
How's it going?
It's showtime, baby.
Huh? Did you take your medication last night?
I don't think I've taken it in a while. Okay. You're either my brother, or you're the sewer troll in the French Revolution. You gonna hurt me? Is somebody gonna hurt me? Because I'm about to put on a really crazy play, and if they hurt me, they just need to know that I'm a matter of fact. Just a matter of fact. This is a fun little Broadway lady, little smoky-eyed princess you never thought would get away from this sucky-ducky man.
Okay, well, no one's gonna hurt you. Okay, and Eve, I feel like you're acting not quite like yourself, so I'm just wondering, could I drive you down to the hospital? Might be a good idea to get some help.
No, because your car might explode. And then we'd have to drink sewer juice or something like that.
Could I walk you down to the hospital?
Sugar, we need sugar.
No, Eve, you want to walk with me?
No, I don't! Because it might chop me up into a tiny little million pieces. Or they might really hurt me. They might force me down to a bed and make me stare at a big bright light forever, never, until I feel like I'm gonna die.
Hey, Eve, what's happening?
Do you have any sugar?
Sure, not on me right now, but I can get some.
Well, they're gonna kill me anyway, so we might as well find some sugar on the journey. It's just the painful way that these things go. They're either gonna shoot me or they're gonna force me up against a wall. You don't need to worry about this.
No.
You're a good neighbor and a good citizen, and one day you're gonna win the best barbecue competition because you're just a human like that.
Best barbecue?
Yeah.
Hey, is Eve heading down to the hospital?
Yeah, we're just making our way now.
Lisa.
You still running the milkmaid store?
Slowly but surely. Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
Looking lovely today.
They're gonna hurt me, so I'm gonna put on a play so they don't hurt me or hurt anybody else like me or force us into a tiny room with no windows and inject us with God knows what. Just like they don't understand that it really hurts. And then I get nightmares and I get really Oh, Lisa!
Yes,
You owe me $20.
I do.
And then you can pay me back on Monday, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, or Sunday. Gerald! Dear.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Just self-motivating, chasing deadlines, so
Okay.
not much. What about you?
Just hanging out with my dog,
Right, Ruby, right?
Rosie. Close.
Hey.
Hey, I'm enjoying you guys.
Yeah,
Hi.
please. What did I see? Rosie, Rosie. How's Rosie?
I didn't tell you, did I?
Tell me what?
So I got Rosie from this pound,
Yeah.
and it was just a sketchy vibe there. Smell, they kept her in this really tiny cage. And she's a big dog, so it was very off-putting. Anyway, I took her to the vet, and they found all these cuts and bruises, so I have a feeling they might have been beating her. They told me at the pound that she was a violent dog.
Okay, and is she at
No.
home with you or anything?
Oh, no. I feel so bad. She's probably just terrified. Like, I can imagine maybe reacting in that environment, in that pound, in that suffocating tiny
Oh my
little...
god, for sure.
Maybe she might lash out. I mean, I wouldn't blame her.
Yeah.
I just don't know why they would treat a vulnerable animal like that.
It just always feels like an excuse, right?
Yeah.
Like I know that resources and funding
Yeah.
and stuff, but I just don't see how that would help anything.
I mean, we have fosters now. We have rescues. We have
Volunteers.
Volunteers.
Endless volunteers.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want a dog right now?
You know, if you ask me, I'd say so. I'd say so 1 time, 2 times, but remember, they have all the power in the words. They have all the power, and there are no documentary cameras, and nobody's accountable because nobody knows all the business. It's a secret. People get hurt in psych wards, and the team was going to tell you that it's normal everyday practice, but that's just the sick-sad way that these things go. Some people are going to get killed, and some people are going to get shot. Some people are going to get shot. Some people are going to get shot. Everything is going to hell, and I am the devil. I'm the big, sad, evil devil, and I've come to tell you that your souls are not safe. I am the queen of darkness, and the world is ending, and you'll all be hungry and sad, and fuck America. Fuck the world, fuck the skies, fuck the oceans. It's all garbage and shit anyway. And fuck anybody who thinks it's okay to hurt other people. It's not okay in my books. Ain't okay? Okay? Down by the bay! Huh?
Eve, let us walk with you.
And if you think you're gonna survive this bullshit with the system collapse and the species breaking down, all your children are gonna suffer because the trees are dying because everything is violent. The bullies are violent and they use their guns and their money to press down on little people like me, but I also come from a violent, rich family, so I can see it from both sides. And I'm here to tell you that I think it's all bad. All bad. Wait, this is running the Wild West rodeo.
I understand, Eve. We can talk more about the system and try and make some changes if you like.
Yeah.
We'll head down to the hospital and we can talk to some doctors and see what we can do.
Oh, I can't be late for the doctors. Let's go.
All right.
You know, they're just good-natured, good-hearted. They're just trying to help, but they don't see the whole story, and that's why we need to speak. Speak. We need to tell them about things, about the police, about the police burnout game, about the peacemaker sexy friends who just want peace and sex and peanut butter sandwiches with the crust cut off. I don't know, maybe tomorrow or today. What do you think?
Let's do today.
Yeah. Yeah, today.
Loving this outfit, Eve. Such a beautiful woman.
I'm not a woman. I'm the devil. But I will save you.
You're one of the best devils I've ever.
Summertime! Little people are everywhere. And the fuckers are too stupid to let it show. Okay. That's a break. I'm gonna run now.
Eve, it's okay. We're just your friends. We're just hanging out, walking to the hospital.
You're trying to hurt me!
Eve, it's okay. It's okay. Everything's okay, Eve. It's okay. It's okay. Shh. It's okay. It's
few more blocks, okay?
But I'm the devil. And they're gonna hurt me.
We all love you, even if you are the devil, okay? And we're gonna make sure that nobody hurts you. Alright? Do you want to just rest here for a moment?
Yeah.
Alright. Do you want a song?
Yeah.
Yeah, alright. Actually, Lisa, do you mind? I can't think of anything.
Sure. Yeah. I once went to the ocean, and I was full of fear. The waves were large and frightening. I thought they'd wash me out of here. But hold on. We're all afraid, we're unsure, we all think we might drown. We think that it might hurt us, we think it'll pull us down. Underneath the uncertain, such beauty can be found. Oh no, beneath the truculent surface, there's love in the depths and there's light. Good to go!
A few more blocks, that's it.
She's great.
She's great, yeah.
Rusty.
Doors up! Good go! Good to go?
Okay, we're good to go.
Good to go.
Good to go.
Well, I'm penning for the dictionary.
Almost there.
Almost there. And I really like the song you picked this time.
It's one of my favorites.
Well, I can tell because you sing it beautifully.
Thanks. I like singing for her.
And it really helps, I think. So, thank you.
There's something about softness, you know? I think it helps when people are soft with her. I don't even know what I'm saying.
No, I think the same thing.
In my ramble of...
No, but about softness.
Yeah.
That people like her, they need softness.
Guys, last the cookie first! Go, achoo! Achoo! Get them tight, you crazy lady!
So is Rosie enjoying parks or
You said the magic word? You should see her tail go on the minute you say the
dogs
B
and
word.
parks? I have.
You knew.
Well, is Rosie looking for company at the park? Maybe I could join sometime with Rosie.
I think she'd like
For
that.
the ducks! For the ducks. In memory of the ducks. But we have to be quiet or else they'll come for our hearts and our souls. Mostly our hearts. In memory of all the crazy people who died. Of all the crazy people who died at the hands of the state and the wards, who were shot, beaten, and experimented on. In memory of the ducks. And the dead people, and the deaths, and their stories, and their histories, and their ghosts, who will point us in the right direction, but only if we listen to what they are saying. Because the speech patterns might be messy, but we know things. We know all things. We might not speak about them, but we know them.
So, what's Rosie's park schedule like? Only less cooking.
Try.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I feel like
So yeah, this is my project about, this is what I went through like 15 years ago. If you look at the Sarah Swire character, whose name is Eve, in this piece, she's going through psychosis. It might be a little more stylized, but maybe some of you in the room have witnessed what psychosis looks like. This is what I went through. And it's destabilizing, it's traumatizing, it's humiliating. It's very concerning for anyone who was around me when I was really, really sick. Especially someone who's never encountered the disease before. There are no words to describe how strange and distressing the condition is. So this is a film that I did, years after recovering, about a utopian vision of how we could care for people who are unwell. It's utopian in the sense that sometimes people are actually dangerous in their psychosis. So obviously, if you ever encounter psychosis, the number one priority is making sure that you feel safe. But it's a depiction of, well, how about we all care for one another, and show up for one another in a moment of distress, instead of, shooting someone in psychosis, which happens in Toronto often. People get shot, or they'll be in an apartment building and a police unit will come to respond to a mental health crisis, and someone might jump off their balcony because the dynamics are. Anyways, so this is Eve Parade. I'm wondering if there are any questions about this film or about anything I shared earlier. Anyone? Yes.
Hello, thank you so much. I was just curious about maybe the creative process behind deciding to keep everything in the public space, right? All the action happens outside on the street instead of in the home. And it's so interesting to see those first few images of everyone being outside the house or outside the home. And then you just talked about how the police and the intervention, and so it's the institutional sort of caring system versus more the more like intimate in-house sort of family care around it. So I'm just curious how you sort of went about creating that sort of dynamic.
Sure. So I did a film before this film called Parlor Palm, and that was about a couple dealing with psychosis. She has climate change apocalypse anxiety, which I've always had, as I said, because of my grandfather. And that film is very claustrophobic, and it's a couple trying to deal with a mental health crisis where the husband is obsessed with climbing the ladder at his law firm. The husband is obsessed with making a lot of money and optics, and it's kind of a toxic guy. And she's having his wife is having this mental health crisis. And so in that film, it was very the whole thing took place in one room, and they didn't have supports outside of one another. So they were trying to handle a psychotic break, just two people. And in making that film and reflecting on it, I was like, oh, two people, not enough to deal with a mental health crisis. Maybe some of the people in this room have dealt with a mental health crisis. Maybe you'll understand me when I say two people are not enough, especially if one of those people is in distress. Two is not enough. So I think in bringing the whole thing outside, I was creating this contrast between the claustrophobia of a couple trying to manage a mental health crisis and a more open, we talk about the closet with the LGBTQ community. Are you in the closet? Are you out of the closet? And I sometimes use that metaphor to talk about psychosis because I am very much out of the closet of mental illness. I'm very open, and I talk to whoever I talk to all kinds of people. I talk to my dentist about my psychosis. I talk to my hairdresser about my psychosis. I feel very safe and open to talk about my crisis, or my history of crisis. So this film was meant to say, hey, maybe it's not the best thing for all of these conversations to be held behind closed doors, where there's so much shame. I come from a family where there's a ton of shame around mental health. It's optics, right? You don't want people to think of you differently. You don't want the family to be seen in any problematic way. So it's very contained, a lot of conversations behind closed doors. And what I'm trying to push for here is if someone breaks a leg, do we feel shame around that? No, we just want to help. And why can't we feel the same way about mental illness, whether it's suicidal depression or psychosis, eating disorders. I understand people's desire to stay private about those things, and I would never judge a person for wanting to stay private. But a lot of what I do is just trying to normalize the conversations. When I got really sick, my parents had no sense about what was happening because there had been no conversation about this condition. It's all behind closed doors. Like 100 years ago, you'd be sent off, or 50 years ago, you'd be sent away from the community if you had any of this illness. So yeah, so for me, I love the idea of, family supports in a home and the intimacy of that. I do love that. I love the idea of, family caring for sick people. But I guess in my mind, I'm like, it needs to be a community. Like we talk about the village when my best friend just gave birth. We would talk about the village a lot. It takes a village to raise a child, and like you need more than just the parents to take care of a baby and children growing up. And I like that idea for mental health as well. It's like, I don't think the individual family unit is often enough to care for someone who's unwell. I think neighbors can play a role. I think that friends can play a huge role. I think that teachers, and I think that we can invite a lot more community members into a healing journey if we want to, and if that support is available. And that's what makes it utopian, because this kind of support isn't always available. Like for people on a Saturday afternoon free to just walk someone to the hospital, but utopian.
And not all neighborhoods are as safe as this one is.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
yes, that's another excellent point. Yes. Yes.
I was just going to mention, I found it fascinating. And part of the fascination is that, and you've already mentioned and talked about it, and I wouldn't even say 100 years ago, 50 years ago, or maybe depending on what town 200 miles away from here is, you could have the same kind of idea of let's restrain this person. And that's one of the things, that's why I liked how you kind of measured those pieces. Because yes, our society, I think unfortunately with social media, is that we have that tendency to take that psychosis and what's the worst thing we can do with the psychosis? Let's show it in the absolute worst way, right? Which is just nonsense. But it happens a lot. And then that, in turn, makes it very difficult to educate people and to get them to understand. So I was really fascinated. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's funny because it's like, it's a balance that needs to be struck, because if you're too aggressive in trying to contain and restrain, you end up causing a ton of harm to the person but you obviously can't really give someone who might be a threat to themselves or others totally free rein. I remember when I was first hospitalized, there's a hospital in downtown Toronto, St. Michael's Hospital, and what would happen, I was in and out of the psych ward for months. They would put you in the tiniest little room with no windows. And as you can see with Eve, I had so much energy. I'm a former athlete, so I was like running and I want to move. And they put you in this tiny, tiny little room. And for me, they've now redone their emergency rooms, and the emergency rooms in the mental health section are larger. There's more space. But it's a tricky thing to balance. You want the person to be safe. You want the community to be safe. If you're too aggressive, that's a problem. But you can't just let someone, do whatever they want, because they might hurt themselves or others, and yeah. So. Yes.
I recently went through something with a family member, one of my aunts, and she went through psychosis, and most of it was stories of pain. Some of it was stuff of grandeur. I am so amazing. Her and I were going to log canoe and then taxis across Canada. She called me for 2 or 3 hours. What's the best practice? Do you go with what she's talking about? Where she's wrong, you confront? What's the best practice? And I was on the phone.
Right.
So it's not like we were together.
Right. Yeah, this one's a tricky one, and I can't speak as a medical professional, like as a doctor, nurse, psychologist. I'm an artist with lived experience, but I don't know what the official, like what, I can speak from my perspective. At this point in my life, if I was going on and on about weird delusions of grandeur, I would want to be called out and brought back to the real world, because I want to live in the real world. And that's a decision I've made. You know, I want to take my medication and I want to be grounded, and because that's what allows me to do my work. So I haven't been sick in a long time, but if I was starting to show symptoms or some kind of expression of delusions of grandeur, I would want someone to, with gentleness, not with aggression, but to gently say, you know what, I think you're a little off there, or that doesn't sound quite right, or are you sure about that? Because it sounds a little bit grandiose. You know, that's probably what I would want. It's been so long since I've had those kinds of experiences. On the other hand, there's some people who are so lost in their illness, and that's a different kettle of fish. Like, it's a different scenario, and I'm not exactly sure what the best way to deal with. I have a few friends whose parents are permanently lost in their psychosis, and you know, these people don't even want to go to the doctor, and it can be a big problem. And I don't necessarily have the answers. It's a stressful thing, and I'm sorry you have to deal with those questions. I think gently trying to bring people back to the real world is not the worst thing, but I think it might depend on the person and what their full story is. Yeah. Yes.
So I understand the framing of keeping it wide and outside. That was one very long take. Was that the plan from the beginning?
Yes.
And, okay,
Yes.
so how did that go?
So as I mentioned in my speech, that actor, this is the second time she had been portraying psychosis in one of my films. And I liked the single take because it indicated where the neighbors lived in relation to one another. Because if you're cutting, you don't have that spatial, geographical sense of who these people are and where they live. They could live halfway across the city, and you know, so cutting would have disrupted the fluidity of the neighborhood. So we shot that single take 5 times, and that's where I caused harm to my lead actor, because I didn't understand the toll it would take on her mental health. We talk about Heath Ledger and the Joker, you know, these actors who take on psychologically disturbing roles, and the actor's mind, when you're portraying psychosis or sexual assault or like any state of heightened emotion, the actor's body and mind can't tell the difference between what is performance and what is real in terms of their like brain chemistry. So this was a learning experience for me after going through this, and my actor was so gentle and diplomatic in sharing her harm. She wasn't aggressive. She's the loveliest person, but months later, she was like, oh yeah, this was very distressing for me. And she didn't understand at the time. So she wasn't able to set her, like she didn't communicate in the moment that she was uncomfortable, and I didn't. It's on me, like the responsibility is on me as the director producer to create the safety. But months afterwards, she said, this was really hard on my psychological well-being doing this film. So my next film, which is Fortescue, which is screening tonight, also depicts psychosis with a different actor. And going into those conversations, I was much more anxious and careful about how to plan safely, how to depict psychosis with safety and with the actor's well-being as the forefront, as the most important thing, more important than the film itself. So, but yeah, so we just shot that. It's one take. It was pretty wild. And also there's car traffic, so that's also a stress. We didn't have a permit. We were just shooting guerrilla style, and you know, it's kind of dangerous because if a car had come in the moments where she's crossing the street and everyone's running around, so it just sort of fell into place magically. But it's an interesting question because this is like my new emphasis as a filmmaker. Safety has to be way more important than the actual product of the film. Yes.
In the same way when you talk about sexual assault on film, they bring in an intimacy coordinator, things like that. Is there a similar job description or a role that should be on films when you talk about these type of things?
That's really interesting. That's a beautiful question. No one's ever asked that before. I have worked with fight choreographers and intimacy coordinators for violence and any sexual scenes on film. That is something that I love that idea, and I'm going to think about it some more. Just like we had for my feature, which is screening tonight, I did some consulting with therapists, and I did some consulting with psychologists and conflict resolution specialists. So there were people who I checked in with, but there's no official mental health on set. It's a great idea. I think that is a great idea. Yeah. Anybody else? No? Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. This was really special. And so yeah, later tonight, we're screening Fortescue, and just a little pitch about Fortescue. So Fortescue is about two female friends up at a cottage, and they're putting on Rapunzel. They're putting on a play for the fellow cottagers to come and watch. And a boyfriend arrives and disrupts the dynamic. And there's a psychotic break. So it's a little different from, it's more conventional. This is a little bit of a strange film. Fortescue is a more conventional, 3-act drama. So, and it's also playing on CBC Gem if you liked it and want to share it with your community. So thank you so much. Thank you.